In a small town there lived a woman who was known to everyone as gentle and humble. She lived a quiet life, far from the hustle and bustle of big cities or the fame that some musicians chased. Her days began early, not with loud alarms or grand plans, but with a soft cup of tea and a few moments of calm before the world fully woke up. She had a small home, modest and tidy, with sunlight spilling through the windows, making the worn wooden floor glow warmly in the morning light. Her life was simple, but it was full of music. The piano she owned had been with her for many years. Its keys had a slight worn touch from the thousands of notes that had been played over time, but she loved it dearly. To her, the piano was not just an instrument. It was a companion, a friend that understood her without words. Every morning she would sit at the piano for hours, practicing quietly, exploring melodies and losing herself in the music. Some neighbors would pass by and hear the soft, beautiful tunes drifting through the windows. They would pause for a moment, enchanted, and then continue on with their busy lives. No one knew just how skilled she truly was. She had been playing since she was very young, learning slowly and patiently, guided by her own curiosity and love for music rather than the desire for applause or recognition. Over the years, she had developed a level of mastery that few could imagine. Yet she never sought fame or competitions. She never dreamed of performing on grand stages or being praised by critics. Her joy came from the music itself and from teaching the small children in her community who showed interest in learning. She would give them lessons for free, simply because she believed that music should be shared, not hoarded. Life in the town was calm and predictable. The days often passed with small routines, teaching a few students in the morning, practicing her own music in the afternoon, and then cooking a simple dinner before reading a book or taking a quiet walk in the evening. People saw her as a kind and talented woman, but many thought of her abilities as ordinary. She is good, yes, but not extraordinary, some would say casually. Even her students didn't fully realize the depth of her talent. They saw her teach with patience and care, but they had never heard her perform the most difficult pieces with her full skill. Then one day, everything changed. News arrived in town about a music academy in the nearby city. It was one of those academies that only accepted the best of the best. They announced a challenge, a test for musicians, teachers, and students alike. The academy had selected one of the most difficult piano pieces ever written. It was a piece that required technical skill, emotion, and precision all at once. The academy invited anyone who believed they could master it to perform in front of a panel of expert teachers. When people in the town heard about the challenge, reactions were mixed. Some were excited and immediately thought of the young, talented students who could try. Others laughed at the idea that someone from a small town could compete with trained professionals from the city. And many quietly dismissed the humble woman. "She may know music, but that piece is far beyond her level," they whispered, but she did not think about their doubts. She did not care about proving anything to anyone. To her, the challenge was simply an opportunity to explore a piece of music she had always admired but never attempted. She felt curious, excited, and a little nervous, but mostly she felt ready to push herself. She quietly decided to accept the challenge. She did not announce it to anyone, not even her closest friends. She simply began preparing. Her preparation was not easy. The piece was incredibly complex. Some sections required lightning-fast finger movements, others demanded a delicate touch and deep emotional expression. At times she felt overwhelmed. She would sit at the piano for hours, running her fingers over the keys, trying again and again to get every note, every pause, every dynamic just right. Some evenings she would feel frustrated and exhausted, but she never gave up. She knew that mastery required patience, persistence, and heart. During this time, the townspeople started noticing changes in her routine. She would spend longer hours at the piano, often with a focused, intense expression. Sometimes neighbors would peek through her window and catch glimpses of her playing. The music was mesmerizing. Unlike before, when her melodies were soft and flowing, now they had a strength, a confidence, and a complexity that seemed almost otherworldly. Yet she remained humble. She never boasted, never played for show, and never sought attention. The piano was her world, and in that world she was free. At the same time, rumors about her participation began to spread. Some of the academy teachers, upon hearing about a humble, middle-aged woman from a small town daring to compete, laughed quietly among themselves. They could not imagine that she could possibly handle the challenge. "She won't last 5 minutes," one of them said. Another added, "She might know a few tunes, but that piece is impossible for someone like her." Even some of her students were skeptical, although they admired her greatly. They couldn't imagine someone so quiet and gentle performing at the level required. Despite the doubts and whispers, she continued practicing. Every morning and evening she focused on the music, not the opinions of others. She worked on her timing, her strength, and her expression. She would play slowly to understand the structure, then gradually increase the speed until her fingers could fly across the keys without error. She listened carefully to the sound, making tiny adjustments in how she pressed each key, how she shaped each note. She was meticulous, patient, and completely absorbed. What made her preparation remarkable was not just her technical skill, but the emotion she poured into the music. She could feel the story behind every note, the struggles and triumphs hidden within the composition. When she played, it wasn't just about hitting the right keys, it was about making the music speak, about letting it breathe and live. She imagined the audience, not as critics or judges, but as people who would feel the music with her. She practiced until every moment of the piece carried meaning, until the piano was no longer just an instrument, but an extension of herself. Her determination and focus began to shape her in ways beyond music. She became more confident, not in a loud or noticeable way, but in a quiet, steady way that others could sense even without words. There was a new energy about her, a calm strength that radiated from her presence. People noticed that she walked with a little more poise, that her voice had a gentle clarity, and that her eyes reflected a deeper understanding of something important. The music had changed her, and in turn, she would soon change the way the world saw her. The night before she was to perform, she sat by the piano in her small living room. The room was quiet except for the soft rustle of the leaves outside and the occasional distant sound of the town settling in for the night. She played the piece one final time, slowly, deliberately, savoring each note. There were moments of tension, moments of calm, and moments of breathtaking beauty. She knew that tomorrow, when she sat in the academy hall, all of her preparation, all of her patience, and all of her love for music would be tested, yet, even in the face of uncertainty, she was calm. She had no desire for fame or praise. She simply wanted to perform the music with honesty, with skill, and with heart. She closed her eyes and let the last note linger in the air. In that moment, she felt ready. She knew that the journey to this point, the countless hours of practice, the quiet determination, and the unwavering love for music was more important than the outcome. Whatever happened tomorrow, she had already achieved something extraordinary. Within herself, the town went to bed unaware of the remarkable event that was about to unfold. Teachers from the academy were already preparing, confident in their own abilities, not realizing that the humble woman they had dismissed was about to challenge everything they believed about talent, mastery, and dedication. And so, in her quiet home, with the piano bathed in soft moonlight, she rested. Her fingers twitched lightly on the keys in her dreams, rehearsing the piece one last time. The humble woman, unknown to most, was ready to show the world that true mastery does not announce itself with noise or arrogance. It begins in silence, grows in dedication, and shines when the moment is right. Tomorrow the world would see her. But tonight, she was simply herself, an ordinary woman with extraordinary music in her heart. The morning of the competition arrived quietly in the small town, though the woman's thoughts were anything but quiet. She woke before dawn, as she always did, and moved through her home with calm efficiency. The sun had not yet risen, and the streets were still empty. She made herself a cup of tea and sat for a moment by the window, looking out at the soft golden light slowly creeping over the rooftops. Her mind, however, was alive with the music she had been practicing for weeks. Every note, every pause, and every delicate change in tone replayed in her head. She could feel the weight of the challenge ahead, but it did not intimidate her. She was focused not on impressing anyone, but on being true to the music. She had learned long ago that mastery was not about showing off or winning recognition. It was about dedication, heart, and connection. After a quiet breakfast, she gathered her sheet music and headed toward the piano. Even though she had played this piece hundreds of times, she approached it with a sense of reverence. It was not enough to simply know the notes. She needed to feel them, to understand the emotion behind them, and to allow the piano to become an extension of her own voice. Her practice that morning was different from usual. She began slowly, deliberately, moving through the sections that had once caused her the most difficulty. There were passages that required lightning-fast finger movements, and she focused intently on each one, breaking them down note by note. She reminded herself that precision came from patience. Every mistake was an opportunity to learn, not a reason to give up. Hours passed in this quiet, concentrated effort. The sun climbed higher in the sky and light filled the room, but she barely noticed. Her world had narrowed to the sound of the piano, the feel of the keys beneath her fingers, and the flow of the music itself. She played the piece over and over, each time noticing new details, small shifts in rhythm, subtle changes in tone, and tiny adjustments that made the music feel alive. As she practiced, she thought about the teachers and experts who would judge her performance. Many of them had already dismissed her as unlikely to succeed. Some had even spoken openly about their doubts. At first, she felt a small twinge of frustration. It was difficult to imagine that people could judge her without knowing her abilities. But she quickly pushed the thought aside. Their opinions were not important. What mattered was her connection with the music, and her own commitment to doing her best. Still, she could not ignore the pressure entirely. This was not just any performance, it was a test of her skill against some of the most accomplished musicians from the academy. The piece she had chosen to play was notorious for its difficulty, demanding technical skill, emotional depth, and stamina all at once. One wrong note, one hesitation, could disrupt the flow and draw attention away from the music. The stakes were high, and she understood them fully. Despite the challenge, she found moments of joy in her practice. There were times when her fingers flew across the keys with perfect precision, and the music seemed to sing through the room. She would pause and close her eyes, letting the sound fill her, feeling it resonate not just in her ears but in her chest, her arms, and her heart. These were the moments she had been waiting for, the moments when preparation and passion met, and the music became something larger than herself. As the hours passed, fatigue began to set in. Her fingers ached slightly, her back felt stiff, and her mind was heavy from concentration. Yet she refused to stop. She reminded herself that endurance was part of mastery. A true performance was not only about technique, but also about sustaining focus and emotion from beginning to end. She practiced the piece in full several times, imagining herself sitting in the grand hall, facing an audience of skeptical teachers. She imagined their doubts, their whispered conversations, and she let that energy push her forward rather than hold her back. In the afternoon, a friend from the community stopped by. He was one of the few people who knew about her decision to enter the competition. He brought a small gift, some fresh flowers for her piano, and offered words of encouragement. "You have an incredible gift," he said gently. "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that this music is yours. No one can take that away from you." She smiled, quietly thankful for the support. His words reminded her that talent and dedication were valuable regardless of recognition. She played a few notes for him, allowing him a glimpse of the mastery that he had only suspected. The music flowed effortlessly, full of nuance, power, and emotion. He was visibly moved, and for a moment she felt the joy of sharing her gift. Even in such a small way, after he left, she returned to her practice with renewed focus. The hours stretched into evening, but she remained undeterred. She moved through the piece with precision, correcting minor errors, refining the timing, and experimenting with subtle shifts in dynamics. She explored different interpretations, testing how soft passages could swell with emotion and how strong chords could express strength without losing elegance. Every moment was an opportunity to deepen her understanding and connection to the music. As night fell, She lit a small lamp by the piano and continued practicing in the warm glow. The town outside had gone quiet, but inside, the music filled the room with life. She felt a sense of calm determination. All her preparation, every moment of practice, was leading to tomorrow. She knew the performance would be the true test. But she also knew that she had already grown in ways that could not be measured by applause or recognition. By the time she finally stopped, her fingers were sore and her body ached from the long hours of concentration. She sat quietly for a moment, letting the room settle around her. The piano stood silently, as if resting after a long conversation. She felt a mixture of fatigue and satisfaction. She had done everything she could to prepare. She had faced the challenge not with fear, but with dedication, patience, and heart. Before going to bed, she reviewed the piece in her mind one last time. She imagined every note, every pause, every emotional swell. She visualized herself sitting in the grand hall, feeling the weight of expectation, yet remaining calm and focused. She imagined the music flowing from her hands, filling the room, touching the hearts of everyone listening. Then she closed her eyes and allowed herself to rest. Sleep came quickly, though her dreams were filled with the piano and the music she loved so deeply. Even in her dreams, she practiced with care, refining every detail, preparing herself for the moment when her skill and passion would finally be seen by the world. The next day would bring a new level of challenge. The Academy Hall would be filled with teachers, students, and critics, all expecting perfection. Many would doubt her, judging her based on her humble appearance rather than her talent. But she was ready. Her preparation had not been about impressing others. It had been about becoming the best musician she could be, about honoring the music itself. In that quiet, small-town home, with the piano bathed in soft lamplight, she had done just that. She had pushed herself to the limits of her skill, explored the depths of the music, and discovered a new level of confidence and mastery within herself. Tomorrow, when she stepped onto the stage, the world would see her. But tonight, she was simply a woman and her piano, joined in a silent, powerful partnership. She was ready to show that true mastery does not come from arrogance or recognition, but from dedication, heart, and a quiet love for the art. The day of the performance finally arrived. The woman left her small-town home before sunrise, carrying only her sheet music and a quiet confidence that had been built through weeks of preparation. The journey to the academy in the nearby city was longer than she had imagined, but she did not mind. The early morning air was fresh and the streets were mostly empty. She took slow, deliberate steps, feeling the weight of her anticipation and excitement, yet holding on to a calm determination. As she approached the grand building of the Music Academy, she felt a strange mix of awe and nervousness. The academy was larger than any place she had ever been to, with tall columns, polished floors, and wide staircases that gleamed under the morning light. Musicians and students were already arriving, carrying instruments, sheet music, and the energy of competition. Some chatted nervously, while others practiced quietly in corners. She watched them for a moment, noting their polished appearances and confident manner, yet she felt no fear. She reminded herself that appearances could be deceiving and that true mastery was about skill, heart, and connection to the music inside the academy. The main hall stretched wide, filled with rows of chairs and a grand stage at the front. Teachers and judges were already seated, reviewing notes and discussing the upcoming performances. Their expressions were focused and serious, and it was clear that they had seen countless musicians attempt the difficult piece before. Many of them had heard rumors about the woman from the small town, and some even dismissed her quietly. She could almost sense their skepticism, though she did not let it affect her. She knew her own preparation and trusted in the work she had done over weeks of quiet practice. As she waited backstage, she noticed other performers pacing nervously or rehearsing last-minute sections of their music. Some were young, confident, and polished, their fingers moving expertly over smaller keyboards or practicing scales. Others were teachers, experienced musicians who had likely performed for large audiences many times. They all carried the weight of expectation, yet none of them seemed to notice her at first. She was small and unassuming in comparison, blending into the background, yet inside she felt a quiet strength. She reminded herself again that this day was not about proving herself to anyone, but about honoring the music she loved. A stage assistant called her name, and she stood, clutching her sheet music for a moment before setting it aside. She walked slowly toward the stage, her shoes making soft sounds against the polished floor. The audience came into view, rows of people sitting in anticipation, some curious, some skeptical, and some clearly expecting brilliance. She took a deep breath, letting the air fill her lungs and steady her mind. She could feel the hum of energy in the room, the collective focus of everyone present, but she did not let it overwhelm her. Instead, she focused on the piano waiting for her at the center of the stage. The grand piano was larger and more elegant than any she had ever played. Its black surface gleamed under the stage lights, and its keys reflected the soft illumination, inviting her to create music that could fill the hall. She approached it slowly, her fingers hovering above the keys for a moment, feeling the smooth surface and the subtle resistance that would respond to every movement. The piano was not an object. It was a partner, ready to speak through her hands and her heart. As she sat down, she could hear whispers from the audience. Some of the teachers were openly skeptical, quietly exchanging glances and murmuring to one another. They had expected someone more flamboyant, more confident, or more polished. They could not imagine that the humble, quiet woman before them could perform the notoriously difficult piece with mastery. Some of the students in the audience had heard rumors, but even they were unsure what to expect. Their curiosity was mingled with doubt, a combination that made the atmosphere tense. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting her mind settle. She visualized the piece, imagining each note, each pause, each emotional swell. She felt the rhythm in her fingers and the melody in her heart. She reminded herself that every practice session, every hour of patient effort, every struggle with a difficult section had led to this moment. She did not need to impress anyone. She needed only to play with honesty, precision, and emotion. The hall fell silent as she began. Her fingers touched the keys lightly at first, exploring the opening notes with care. The sound was soft, delicate, yet confident, drawing the audience in without a single word. She did not rush. She allowed the music to breathe, letting each note find its natural place. There was a subtle power in the way she played, an invisible thread connecting her heart to every key, every chord, every pause. As she moved into the more complex sections, her fingers flew over the keys with precision and grace. She had practiced these passages countless times, and now they felt natural, almost effortless. The audience, initially quiet and skeptical, began to shift in their seats. The complexity of the piece was no longer intimidating when played with such skill and emotion. Each note seemed to tell a story, each pause carried meaning, and the dynamics of the performance drew the listeners into a world created entirely by her hands. The teachers in the front row, who had doubted her abilities, began to exchange glances. Some of them leaned forward, eyes widening as they realized that what they were hearing was far beyond what they had expected. They had prepared to critique, to find flaws, but now they were forced to sit in silence, captivated by the mastery before them. They could not believe that someone so humble, so quiet, could command the music in such a way. The piece, notorious for its difficulty, was being played flawlessly, with emotion and depth that few could achieve even after years of professional training. The audience was mesmerized. Students who had come to watch experienced musicians were leaning forward, trying to absorb every note. Some of them felt tears prick at the corners of their eyes, touched by the beauty and power of the music. Others were silent, hearts racing as they realized that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The woman's presence on stage was quiet yet commanding. She did not need dramatic gestures or flourishes to hold attention. Her music did all the speaking. As the piece moved toward its climax, her fingers moved faster yet remained precise and controlled. The hall seemed to hold its breath, listening to the intricate rhythms and soaring melodies. Each chord resonated through the room, filling the space with emotion. The balance between strength and delicacy, speed and calm, made the performance feel alive. It was not just a technical exercise. It was a story, a journey, a display of heart and soul. By the time she reached the final notes, the room was completely silent. The last chord lingered in the air, echoing softly as if the hall itself was reluctant to let go. The audience waited, suspended in the magic of the moment, unsure how to react. And then, slowly, a single clap sounded. It was cautious at first, but it grew quickly as more people joined in, until the entire hall erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, not just polite clapping, but a genuine recognition of something rare and extraordinary. The teachers, who had once doubted her, were frozen. Their expressions were a mixture of disbelief, admiration, and awe. Some whispered to one another, unable to hide their shock. They had expected a competent performance at best, but they had witnessed mastery. The piece that had challenged countless musicians had been transformed in her hands into something breathtaking. Alive and deeply moving, she rose from the piano with a calm smile, her eyes shining not with pride but with quiet satisfaction. She bowed slightly to the audience, acknowledging their appreciation without arrogance. Every clap, every cheer, every glance of surprise and admiration was not for her ego, but for the music itself, for the journey she had taken to bring it to life. As she stepped away from the piano, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The hours of practice, the struggle, the patience, and the dedication had all led to this moment. She had not only performed a difficult piece, but she had connected with the audience and the judges on a level that went beyond technical skill. She had spoken through music and they had listened. The woman left the stage quietly, her heart still racing, yet grounded in the knowledge that she had done her best. She had faced the doubt, the pressure, and the challenge, and had emerged not as someone seeking recognition, but as a musician sharing her deepest passion. The Academy Hall buzzed with excitement and surprise as people tried to process what they had just witnessed. Some were inspired, some were humbled, and some simply sat in awe. In that moment, it became clear to everyone present that true mastery did not depend on outward appearances, confidence, or status. It depended on dedication, patience, and a deep connection to the art itself. And the humble woman from the small town had shown that in abundance. The applause continued long after the last note had faded, filling the Academy Hall with a sound that was almost overwhelming. It was not just polite clapping or obligatory cheering. It was a genuine, heartfelt response to what the audience had just witnessed. The woman stepped back from the piano slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and quiet satisfaction. Her hands were still tingling from the intensity of the performance, and her heart was racing, but she felt calm in a way she had never felt before. She had given everything she had, and the music had spoken for itself. As she walked toward the edge of the stage, she could see the teachers sitting in stunned silence. Their initial skepticism had vanished completely. Some of them leaned forward, their mouths slightly open, eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected a competent performance, perhaps a few impressive moments, but what they had just heard was something entirely different. It was mastery, raw, emotional, and breathtaking. They whispered to one another in low tones, trying to make sense of what they had seen. One teacher shook his head slowly, muttering under his breath, I have never heard anything like this before." The students in the audience were equally affected. Many of them had come expecting to see a difficult piece performed with technical skill, and while they had certainly seen talent before, nothing had prepared them for this. They were leaning forward in their seats, holding their breath, still processing the range of emotion, precision, and depth that had come from a single performer. Some were smiling, some had tears in their eyes, and others simply sat in awe, unable to speak. The performance had not only displayed technical brilliance, it had touched something deeper, something that resonated with every person in the room. Even the more experienced musicians were shaken. They had spent years practicing, performing, and teaching, but the way she had played the piece was unlike anything they had encountered. It was not just the accuracy of her notes or the speed of her fingers. It was the music itself. She had given life to the composition in a way that made it feel new, vibrant, and deeply human. Every phrase, every pause, every chord had carried meaning. It was as if she had captured the soul of the piece and shared it openly with everyone present. The murmurs among the teachers grew louder as they tried to discuss what they had just heard. Her control, the emotion. "It's perfect," one whispered. Another shook his head in disbelief. "I have seen many talented musicians, but this is something else entirely." A few of them quietly approached one another, their earlier doubts replaced by genuine admiration. Some took notes, while others simply sat in stunned silence, unsure how to describe the experience they had just witnessed. The woman herself did not linger in thought about their reactions. She had performed for the music, not for the applause or recognition, and in a way that allowed her to experience the moment without pressure. She felt gratitude that she had the opportunity to play, to share the depth of her preparation, and to connect with an audience in such a profound way. She also felt humility. She knew that talent alone was not enough. It was her dedication, patience, and love for music that had allowed her to reach this level. She let herself quietly smile, acknowledging that the work she had done had been worth every sacrifice and long hour of practice. As she stepped off the stage, some audience members rushed forward to speak with her. A young student approached cautiously, eyes wide, and said, "I have never heard anything so beautiful in my life. You make the piano speak like it has a soul." The woman thanked him gently, her voice soft but full of warmth. She spoke little, but each word carried sincerity, and the student left the conversation inspired. Feeling a spark of motivation he would carry for years to come, other musicians came forward as well. Some with hesitant admiration, others with overt enthusiasm. "How did you do that?" one asked, almost in disbelief. Another said, "I've practiced for years, but the way you play, it's on another level entirely." The woman listened politely, nodding quietly, but she did not boast or offer elaborate explanations. To her, the skill was not a tool for showing off, it was a way to communicate, to share emotion, to inspire others without needing words. She believed that the true measure of music was not in accolades, but in the feelings it evoked in those who heard it. Meanwhile, the teachers continued to analyze the performance. They had seen many musicians struggle with the piece, even those with extensive training, but she had executed it flawlessly while infusing it with deep expression. They began to discuss quietly among themselves, trying to figure out how someone so unassuming, so modest in appearance, could possess such mastery. One of the older teachers, with decades of experience, shook his head slowly and whispered, "It's not just technical skill. It's the heart. She plays with her entire being." As the excitement settled slightly, the academy director called for a brief pause. He wanted to ensure that the audience and judges could collect their thoughts before continuing. People lingered in their seats, exchanging comments and impressions. Some were still in awe, replaying the performance in their minds. Others were inspired to try harder, motivated to push themselves to reach the level of dedication they had witnessed. It was clear that the woman's performance had left a lasting impact, more than just a display of technical ability. It had become a lesson in discipline, humility, and the power of genuine passion. Backstage, she was approached by one of the judges. He was an experienced musician known for his critical eye and tough standards. Even he had been silenced by her performance. "You have something extraordinary," he said quietly, almost reverently. "I have judged countless musicians in my career, and I have never encountered someone who combines skill, emotion, and presence in the way you do. You should be proud." She thanked him softly, understanding that praise was not the goal, but the acknowledgement from someone she respected felt meaningful. Word of her performance began to spread quickly within the academy. Students who had been skeptical now spoke in hushed tones about the woman who had defied all expectations. Teachers who had doubted her openly were now quietly acknowledging that they had misjudged her. Even the more confident performers were shaken, realizing that talent and humility could coexist in a way they had rarely seen. The energy in the hall shifted from curiosity and doubt to admiration and inspiration. Despite the growing recognition, the woman remained grounded. She did not seek the spotlight or demand attention. She moved quietly through the room, offering polite words of thanks to those who had approached her, and listening sincerely to those who wanted to express their admiration. Her humility was part of what made the performance so remarkable. It was not just her technical brilliance or emotional depth. It was the way she had carried herself calm, focused, and unassuming while achieving something extraordinary. As the day progressed, the impact of her performance continued to unfold. Teachers began to rethink their assumptions about skill, dedication, and appearance. Students felt inspired to practice harder, to approach music with the same patience and love that she had demonstrated. Even casual observers who had attended simply to watch a competition left the hall with a renewed appreciation for the power of dedication and passion. Her performance had become more than a display of talent. It was a lesson in perseverance, humility, and the ability of one person to move the hearts of many through devotion and skill. Later, as the audience slowly dispersed, some people lingered near the stage, hoping for another glimpse of the woman who had captivated them. They wanted to see the person behind the music, to understand the quiet strength that had allowed her to transform a difficult composition into something so alive and beautiful. She greeted them with a soft smile, her calm demeanor unchanged by the applause and admiration. She answered questions briefly and sincerely, never boasting, never exaggerating, simply sharing her love for the music that had carried her through so many years of dedication. By the end of the day, it was clear that something remarkable had happened. The woman had not only performed a difficult piece with extraordinary skill, but she had also left an indelible impression on everyone present. Teachers, students, and audience members alike carried with them a new understanding of what true mastery could look like: discipline, patience, humility, and the courage to dedicate oneself fully to the art. Even in the face of doubt or skepticism. As she packed her belongings and prepared to leave the academy, she reflected quietly on the day. She did not feel the need for recognition, awards, or accolades. Her satisfaction came from the knowledge that she had played with honesty, precision, and heart. She had faced the challenge, given her best, and shared something deeply personal and meaningful with the world. That, in her eyes, was more valuable than any prize or certificate could ever be. Walking back to her car, she felt a sense of quiet joy. She had proven, to herself more than anyone else, that dedication and love for one's craft could overcome doubt, skepticism, and even the limits of appearance. The teachers who had once dismissed her now carried a new respect for her skill, and the students had witnessed an example of how patience and practice could create something extraordinary. Her impact extended far beyond the performance itself. It had touched hearts, inspired minds, and reminded everyone. After the performance, life slowly began to settle back into a rhythm, but things were different now. The woman returned to her small town, to the quiet streets, and the familiar comfort of her modest home. Everything looked the same, yet there was a new lightness in her step, a sense of accomplishment that had never been there before. She carried with her the memory of the applause, the faces in awe, and the quiet astonishment of the teachers and students who had witnessed her performance. But more than that, she carried a deep satisfaction that came from knowing she had faced a challenge and given everything she had. Not for recognition, but for the music itself. The next morning, she returned to her usual routine. She brewed her tea, opened her windows to let in the sunlight, and sat at her piano. Her fingers brushed the keys softly, almost reverently, as if greeting an old friend. The notes flowed naturally, without the pressure of performance or competition. She practiced as she always had, focusing on the beauty of the music, the feeling of each note, and the story that could be told through sound. Even after the excitement and recognition from the academy, she remained grounded. Her life had not changed dramatically. She still lived simply, taught her students patiently, and found joy in the quiet moments, but her perspective had shifted. She understood that mastery was not just about skill, but about dedication, humility, and the ability to connect deeply with one's art. News of her performance continued to spread beyond the academy. Articles appeared online, sharing the story of a humble woman from a small town who had astonished expert teachers and musicians with her skill and emotional depth. Videos circulated of her playing, capturing the beauty and precision of her technique. Many people were inspired by her story, not only by her talent, but by her dedication and her quiet, unassuming nature. Readers and viewers wrote messages expressing admiration, saying that her performance reminded them of the power of hard work, patience, and humility. For the first time, she realized that her love for music could touch people she had never met. Across places she might never see. Despite the growing recognition, she did not seek out attention. She did not chase interviews or accept invitations for public appearances. Instead, she focused on teaching her students, sharing her knowledge and love for music in the most personal and meaningful way she could. She encouraged them to practice with patience, to listen with care, and to connect with music in a way that was honest and heartfelt. She told them that the goal was never fame or accolades, but the joy and fulfillment that comes from dedication and expression. Her students, inspired by her example, worked harder, practiced longer, and approached their own music with a renewed sense of purpose. Occasionally, visitors from the academy or journalists came to her town to meet her in person. They wanted to hear more, to understand how someone so humble could possess such extraordinary skill. She welcomed them politely, offering quiet smiles and thoughtful words. She shared her story simply: years of practice, love for music, patience, and a willingness to face challenges without fear. She emphasized that talent alone was not enough, it was the hours of work, the dedication, and the sincerity behind every note that truly mattered. Many left inspired, carrying her message back to their own communities and spreading it further. Over time, her story became a source of encouragement for others. Young musicians in her town and beyond looked up to her as a model of what could be achieved with dedication and heart. Experienced musicians reflected on their own assumptions and realized that true mastery could be found in unexpected places, often hidden behind quiet humility. Her performance had not only shown technical skill, but had also demonstrated the importance of character, persistence, and love for one's craft. People began to understand that greatness is not always loud or flashy, it can be quiet, patient, and deeply human. At the community center where she taught, her students noticed a change as well. They could see the pride she carried, not in herself, but in the music they were learning together. She became even more attentive, guiding their fingers, shaping their understanding of rhythm and expression, and encouraging them to find their own voices. She emphasized that mistakes were not failures but opportunities to learn, and that every moment spent practicing was a step toward mastery. Her lessons became more than technical instruction, they were lessons in patience, dedication, and the quiet courage to pursue excellence. One afternoon, a young student approached her nervously, holding a simple piece of sheet music. I want to try something difficult," the student said, voice trembling slightly. The woman smiled gently and nodded. "Good," she said softly. "Challenging yourself is how you grow. Take your time, listen carefully, and trust yourself. You are capable of more than you think." She guided the student's fingers to the keys, showing the subtle movements, the importance of touch, and the emotion that could be expressed through even the smallest gestures. As the student played, hesitated, and tried again, the woman watched quietly, offering encouragement and gentle correction. The joy on the student's face when the music finally flowed smoothly was mirrored in her own expression. A quiet satisfaction in sharing the love of music and helping someone else discover their potential. As months passed, the woman continued her quiet life, enriched by the experience at the academy but never defined by it. She still practiced daily, explored new compositions, and refined her understanding of music. She continued to teach, inspire, and encourage, leaving a lasting impact on those around her. The recognition she had received was never her goal, but it became a byproduct of her dedication. A reminder to others that quiet persistence and genuine passion can shine even when no one expects it. Occasionally, letters and messages arrived from people far away, thanking her for sharing her story. They spoke of hope, inspiration, and motivation. Some wrote that her journey had reminded them to pursue their own passions with dedication and humility. Others wrote that her performance had changed the way they understood music, teaching them that skill and emotion must go hand in hand. She read these messages with a quiet smile, touched by the impact she had made, but never seeking to claim credit. To her, it was the music itself that mattered, the way it could reach people's hearts, move their emotions, and inspire action. In quiet moments, she often reflected on her journey. She thought about the long hours of practice, the doubts she had faced, the skepticism of others, and the challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. She remembered the moment she sat at the piano in the academy hall, feeling the weight of expectation and the thrill of possibility. She remembered the silence as she played, the stunned faces of teachers and students, and the applause that had followed. More than anything, she remembered the joy she had felt in expressing herself through music, and the realization that her dedication had the power to touch others. Her story became a quiet legend in the community. People would talk about the humble woman who had amazed experts with her mastery, not to glorify her but to highlight what could be achieved through patience, discipline, and love for one's craft. Parents encouraged their children to listen to her performances and learn from her example. Teachers used her story to remind students that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. Musicians reflected on their own practices and approaches, inspired to bring more heart and sincerity into their work. Through it all, she remained grounded. She continued to live simply, to practice diligently, and to teach with patience and care. She did not chase fame or accolades, and she did not seek recognition. Her satisfaction came from the music itself, from the connection she had with her students, and from the knowledge that dedication and passion could create something meaningful. Her life became a testament to the idea that quiet persistence, humility, and love for one's art could leave a lasting legacy far greater than any award or title. Years later, when people remembered her performance at the Academy, they did so not only because of her technical skill, but because of the inspiration it brought. They remembered a woman who had faced doubt and skepticism, who had worked tirelessly and quietly, and who had shared her passion with the world without arrogance or showiness. They remembered how she had taught them a lesson in courage, patience, and the power of following one's heart. In her small town, she continued her life much as before. She rose early, practiced her piano, taught her students, and found joy in simple moments. But those who had witnessed her journey and those who had heard her music knew that her life was extraordinary. Not because she had sought attention, not because she had won awards, but because she had embraced her passion fully, faced challenges without fear, and shared her gift with the world in the most sincere way possible. Her legacy was not in fame or recognition, but in the lives she touched, the inspiration she offered, and the example she set. People who heard her story learned that greatness often comes quietly, that dedication and love for one's craft can overcome doubt, and that true mastery is as much about heart as it is about skill. And the woman herself, living simply in her small home, continued to play the piano with the same quiet joy, knowing that she had not only fulfilled her own potential, but had shown others what is possible when one dedicates oneself fully to their